Hello YouTube. Here we have what is going to be my new computer. What I have here is a Gigabyte Z68P DS3 motherboard. Has a little MSATA connector on it so you can use one of those SSDs. Unlocked performance as well. Has dual BIOS and can support hard drives to 3 terabytes or later, which is good. Warning, don't put an 1156 CPU into an 1155 socket, because you will break your motherboard. And that's probably a liability. Here's the manual, and the CD, of course. This is an ultra durable 3 motherboard, apparently. Intel Smart Response Technology Installation Guide, and the Multilingual Installation Guidebook. Muy bueno. I swear to God, I'm gonna have so many SATA cables just lying around, it's ridiculous. I already have SATA cables in my machine already. This is gonna be ridiculous. I'm gonna have SATA cables just lying around. That's gonna be nice. There's your back plate. And the board itself. Let's take a look at the actual board. Here's the board itself. Let's look down at it. Start with the bottom. We have a fan. We have a TPM module socket right there, in case you're running a shady business deals or something. USB. I think this is all USB 2. It is. There's your front panel connectors. There's another fan for the hard drives. There's your bridge heatsink right there. There's a battery. This thing has 2 PCI X16 slots, but as you can see by the lack of pins over here, this one's only 8X, so you can put up to an 8X card in here. If this was going to be a server, I would use this slot for something like a RAID card, and use this slot for something a little bit more substantial. This thing also has 2 PCI X1 slots, so you can put a sound card or a wireless card in either of these, assuming that your graphics card up here doesn't block this one, which in my case it's going to block that one, so I'd only have this one free. And 2 PCI slots, which is important if you have older hardware you need to use. For example, if you have a parallel port card or a SCSI card even, you know, it's important to have those. The reason I needed these is because of my sound card. And the reason I'm using a sound card is because the sound card has a surround output. The onboard audio does not. This thing has a little MSATA connector down there, so you can put a little card type SSD in there and use that as either cache for your hard drive or as a boot drive. I'm using a SATA SSD that just goes into the SATA ports itself, so that should be alright. Now if you look at the sticker here, SATA 2 port 5 will be disabled when MSATA slot is in use, so it remaps one of these over to here. And here we have the rest of the board. It has 2 USBs, a PS2 port, which is good because my Cherry Switch keyboard uses a PS2. At least I prefer to use it that way. This thing still has parallel and serial, which is awesome for legacy things. Parallel comes in very handy. You'd be surprised how useful it still is for things like JTagging routers, for example. Optical audio, so there's onboard audio, and HDMI, so there's also onboard video, which now is actually part of the CPU on these newer setups. 4 more USBs and Ethernet. And the onboard audio, of course, which is just plain Jane normal Realtek onboard audio, which is good. Realtek audio is really good. Solid capacitors all over the place, so if one goes bad, so if a solid cap goes bad, you don't get leaky electrolyte all over the place. It just doesn't function the way it's supposed to, which is, you know, yeah. 4 RAM slots, so that will help. This thing is going to have 8 gigs of RAM in it at first, but I'm going to probably put 16 in there at some point. Not sure if I'm going to use the same stuff, but, you know. This thing has 6 SATA ports. And that is the board. The processor I purchased, it's not the most high-end processor in the world, but it's very high-end for a Core i3. I bought an Intel Core i3 2105, and the reason I got the reason you would want the 2105 is because it has Intel HD Graphics 3000, while most of these processors have Intel HD Graphics 2000. Now the 3000 is important because let's say you have a graphics card in here and it goes bad. What are you going to do? You have to use onboard video. And HD 3000 can actually play games pretty decently, according to my friend Sean. And that's the reason I have it on here. In case I have a nasty graphics card failure, I can still use the computer and have it perform decently. There's the CPU itself. There you have it. So I'll be sticking that in there. And I'm not going to use the stock cooler on these because I don't trust push pins with, you know, an $134 processor. That's just not an investment I'm willing to waste. Here's the type of RAM I'll be using, and it's not actually 16 gigabytes. You may recognize these boxes from when Grateful42 and I built his computer, how they sent him 4 of these by accident, Tiger Direct. Well, he let me keep 8 of them. He let me keep 8 gigabytes. So, I'm going to use this RAM in this build. So, I'm very grateful, Grateful42. Thank you very much for these. This definitely saved me $50. So, here the sticks are. Of course, they're Vengeance. Of course, they look cool, but I personally don't care for how... I don't really care what they look like, as long as they work. So I'm going to put these in here. This is 1600 megahertz RAM with a CAS latency of 99924, if I remember correctly. So, it should be pretty good. This board can actually handle 1866, which is what I plan to upgrade it to at some point or another. Although I might just use more 1600 if that costs less. I'm not sure. I don't know. We'll see how it works. This RAM will work just fine for now, I think. The Vengeance stuff I've heard is just good RAM, so yeah. Okay, I have the board installed into my computer now. All the cords out of the way, and I'm getting ready to install the CPU. Here's what it looks like. There you go, a Core i5 2105. Look at all those pins, or pads actually. That's going to be nuts. So let's get the socket all ready here. Damn, this thing's actually hard to open. There we go. I had to concentrate a little bit. Alright. Save these in case you need to put the board back. So, let's put the CPU in. And she's in. So, it actually sounds like you're like breaking something. Get this in there. These are a tight fit to get in there, but they hold the CPU very firmly. So there you go. Unfortunately, my cooler I ordered isn't here yet, so I'm going to have to use the stock cooler until then, which is of course push pin bullshit. But this should be good. This should work long enough for me to install Windows, get all my software working. Then that cooler's supposed to come tomorrow. So what I'll be able to do is just put that other cooler on. But for now, I'm just going to use the stock cooler. I mean, whatever. It'll work temporarily. Alright, I have most of this mess together. I'm so sad though, because I had to put a light on SATA DVD drive in here because this board doesn't have IDE anymore. I sad-faced when that happened. But I have a SATA version of one of these drives on the way, and I'll be able to use that. But I just really all I need the light on one for is to install Windows, to be perfectly honest. So that'll be good. And for the most part, it's ready to have Windows installed. So let's just go over what I have in here. I have the Core i3-2105 with a stock cooler, unfortunately. Of course, 8 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance RAM with 1600 megahertz. An AVGA NVIDIA GTS 250 with a gig of RAM. I have an Asus Zonar DG sound card and a CompUSA FireWire card. As you can see here, this is the reason I need a sound card, is for that right there. And there you have it. This is going to be one great machine. I have a good feeling about this. Ah, and I plug the speakers in, turn them on, and I hear odd noises come out of it. Interesting. But anyhow, this is the moment of truth. Are we going to see this thing fire up? Well, I hope so. Let's press the button and find out. Apparently so. I heard a beep. Good. Just trying to load Windows. So, it works. Let's see. But first, let's check the BIOS. Delete. Yes, this is still a regular BIOS. Very nice. Let's see how PC Health is doing. Cold processor. Wow. All the rest of my fans are plugged into the power supply, so I'm going to turn my fan warnings on here. 60. Enabled. Let's see if it'll boot now. Beep. Yep, it's going to try to load Windows. So let's just see if it boots. Come on, you can do it. It indeed does work. So, what I'm going to do is reinstall Windows so it's a clean copy. So, grab Windows 7. Give it a good, whoops. Give it a good new home on this computer here. And there we are. Windows is loading files. I have a feeling this is going to be a great machine. Well, Windows just finished installing, so let's check everything here. Oh yeah. 8 gigs of RAM and a Core i3-2105, 3.1 gigahertz. Awesome computer. And of course it's Windows 7 Professional. Sweet, man. I've been wanting a Core i series computer for a while now. This is going to be awesome. Alright, we have the motherboard drivers installing now. Installing the LAN drivers, as you can see there. I had to do this beforehand, before installing Service Pack 1, because I don't have any internet. So, I'm going to install the motherboard drivers. Then, we'll go from there. And we are now installing Service Pack 1. It's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. Come on. There it is. And install. There we go. This is what I do when I install Windows. I just update everything. Then install everything else. This is the cooler that just arrived for the i3 build. And as you can see, it actually uses real screws and a back plate. Now these plastic tabs here may appear to be cheap looking, but all these plastic tabs are guides. They're only guides for the screws. They're not actually, yeah. Underneath the plastic is actually metal, so the X-clamp will keep it down there. Well, it's not exactly an X-clamp, but you get my point, I think. Apparently it says GT 1156, because it was probably originally 1156 cooler. Has a standard, looks like a standard 80mm fan on it, with a PWM connector, so it'll actually be speed controlled and not be loud. Excellent. I'll stick it in the computer. Here's a pleasant surprise. I took the stock thermal grease off of this cooler I just got. There's a copper core in there. This cooler was about $15. That's pretty impressive, actually. This is the 95-watt version of this cooler. You can buy it on CompUSA.com or Tiger Direct, I think. I got it off CompUSA myself. As you can see, the cooler is not lapped extremely well, so make sure you use enough thermal grease if any of you guys choose to get this cooler. Yeah. And the CPU cooler has been installed on the motherboard. This is how it fits on there. Screws in nicely. Nice big heatsink. Reminds me of the coolers that used to come with the Prescott chips. A nice big heatsink like that. And I can very much pick it up by the heatsink like I usually pick up a computer, and here's the back plate, which is the black plastic. So this is a true screw down design. This is what I like. It's very sturdy. It's good to know that you can still get this design on Intel motherboards, because in my mind it's essential. So after taking the board out of the case again, let's put the RAM back in. And everything. And we'll get started. We'll put this back in here, bring it back over to the desk, and see how it performs. This is the computer on with that cooler put on it, and I don't really notice a difference. Actually, it's just as quiet as the stock fan. Which is excellent. Oh yeah, you just heard the graphics card slow down. This thing is silent. It's actually quieter than the stock fan. That's impressive. So that cooler I put on here is made by System X. You can find them on CompUSA if you're interested in getting one. I would definitely look into it if I were you, for sure. Because it's better than the stock cooler. At least it's more secure, even if the base of it's plastic. Yeah, so. Let's log in here. Focus, you idiot. There we go. Despite being on SSD, it seems to take a while. So in conclusion to this build, I'd say it was definitely a worthwhile upgrade. I've been using this thing for about a day, and it's very fast. The i3 made a big difference. The i3 is faster than a Core 2 quad. A lot faster. So yeah, the only thing I have left to do is change out this DVD drive with an LG one. But I'm not going to film that because that's kind of boring if you ask me. So yeah, that's the i3 build. Performs very well, and I'm very happy with it. The memory bandwidth is a lot higher than with the DDR2 800 system I used to have. Now that I've bumped it up to DDR3 1600. Anyhow, that was the Sandy Bridge build that I've been wanting to do for a while, so there you go. Hope you enjoyed, and have a good one, everybody. Ciao.